Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy previous year questions analysis. So in these sessions we have been discussing and analyzing the previous year questions asked by UPSC in the year 2021. So this session we will be starting with the question, and that is related to Indian geography. Okay, so this is particularly with respect to the growing threat of landslides. Now the question here asking about the differentiation between the causes of landslides in Himalayan region and Western Ghats. Okay, so the question here asking about the major causes of landslides in Himalayan region as well as in the Western Ghats. Please understand, this is very simple question. You just have to differentiate some causes initially. So first define what constitutes landslides. Okay, so what exactly landslide means, and then you just have to differentiate between the causes of landslides in Himalayan region and Western Ghats. Okay, so you should draw such a table in the answer itself and then write the answer. Now while you have differentiated, you just mention some suggestions also in order to avoid the vulnerability to the landslides. Okay, so therefore your answer will become holistic and comprehensive. Now in the introduction itself, you just have to define what exactly is the meaning of landslides. Okay, so landslides are defined as a movement of mass debris. Okay, so this involves movement of mass debris, earth or rock sliding down under the effect of gravity. Okay, so this is a fast-paced movement of rock debris, mass of debris, earth, rock sliding down under the effect of gravity. Now landslides you very often experiences in Himalayas, and nowadays even Western Ghats have also been experiencing these landslides. So what could be the major reasons for these landslides? For example, earthquake, one reason for the landslides. Since Himalayas are very prone to the earthquakes, so therefore Himalayas very often see these landslides. Now after that, the illegal and unscientific mining is also to some way responsible for the landslides in Western Ghats. Okay, so and apart from that, the deforestation. Now generally what happens with the deforestation? It loosens the topsoil. And even the commercial activities, and even the shifting cultivation, or it is called as zoom cultivation. So this is also some way or the other responsible for the landslides. Now even most of the encroachment into the forest areas and mountainous regions with having steep slopes. Okay, so they are having steep slopes, and steep slopes are highly vulnerable to these landslides. So landslides are very common problem across Himalayas and Western Ghats. Okay, so they are very common problem. So you have understood the definition of landslides and what are the major reasons for the landslides. Okay, so I have mentioned here the major reasons for the landslides. Now after writing about this, you just have to understand the vulnerability of different regions for these landslides. Now if you look at the vulnerability map of these landslides, so in green you can see here the areas or the regions across the Western Ghats which are vulnerable to landslides. Okay, so this is a moderate or moderately high hazard prone zones for the landslides. Now if you look at this pink marking here, so this is high, a very high hazard, and after that we also talked about high hazard nature of these landslides. Okay, now if you look at all the Himalayas, they are very high, or they are prone to these landslides. Okay, so landslides in the Himalayan region and the Western Ghats have distinct causes. Okay, so they have different causes. So landslides in Himalayas and Western Ghats. So this is particularly due to their unique geographical and climatic conditions. So they have different geographical and climatic conditions. Now here we differentiate the major causes of landslides in these two regions. Okay, what could be the major reasons? So we have given a table, and in that table we will discuss. Now firstly understand, we need to talk about the Western Ghats and then Himalayan region. So there's a heavy mining activities in the Western Ghats region is a major factor for landslides. See, as I have already told you that Western Ghats in recent times have seen high levels of mining, particularly the illegal mining and also the unscientific mining practices. So these practices have led to the landslide intensity and increasing the activity of landslides. So on the other hand, when we talk about the Himalayas, so Himalayas are very often known as young fragile mountains. Okay, so they are young fragile mountains, they're still growing. So why we say that they're still growing? Because the Indian subcontinent or the Indian plate is colliding with the Eurasian plate. Okay, so now if you look at this Indian plate, so this has been colliding with the Eurasian plate. So because of this reason, Himalayas are still growing, or still they are considered as young mountains. Now after that, we need to talk about the deforestation for settlements and cutting for road construction. So this is also another major reason in Western Ghats for landslides. Okay, so the deforestation has been increasing because of the developmental projects and the developmental activities in Western Ghats. So in a way that led to the growth of these landslide intensity. So after that, the sediments in the mountains are not consolidated and they are very often considered as loose. So this is also responsible for landslides in Himalayan region. Okay, so if you look at the sediment structure in the Himalayan region, so they are not consolidated, they are not well consolidated, and they are very loose. Okay, so this is another reason for that. And after that, the anthropogenic activities usually give rise to anomalous slopes, and due to the gravitational pull and rain, so overlying material comes down, right? If you understand anthropogenic activities in Western Ghats, see, they usually have the anomalous slopes, and when the gravitational pull usually works with heavy rain, the overlaying materials across these slopes, the overlaying material across these slopes usually comes down, and that led to the heavy landslides in the Western Ghats region. Now after that, there's a huge tectonic activity as well in the Himalayan region, because as I have already told you that the Indian plate is colliding with the Eurasian plate. So because of this reason, Himalayans still experience the tectonic activity with the plate has been moving up. Okay, so the Indian plate has been moving up over the Eurasian plate, and this has been very often causing the instability. So we have experienced 2014 earthquake, and apart from 2014 earthquake, recently the Joshimath sinking is also one such example, right? You can mention. So hence landslide can also occur during the dry seasons as well. Now apart from that, we need to talk about the concentration of heavy rainfall in concentrated areas. Now, so if you look at the Western Ghats, so Western Ghats, there are on the western side of the Western Ghats, they experience heavy rainfall. Over on the eastern part of the Western Ghats, so this is a rain shadow region. So since the western part of the Western Ghats experience higher rainfall or heavy rainfall, so usually we see a very high intensity of landslides in the Western Ghats. Okay, so this heavy rainfall is also to some extent responsible for landslides. After that, the steep and sharp slopes. Now Himalayas are young mountains, they're still growing, but if you look at the slopes in Himalayas, they're very steep. So because of these steep and sharp slopes in the Himalayas, they are major factors for the landslides in the region. So they're mostly responsible for the landslides in the region. Now after that, we need to talk about the windmill projects, so that are being constructed in the Western Ghats. Now we all know that, so if you look at the map, the southern region have high potential for the windmill projects. Okay, so since southern region have the high potential for the windmill projects, Western Ghats will become a potential site to install these windmill sites. So these windmill sites very often led to huge fractures on the mountains. They are also loosening the structures which are present on the mountains. So that further intensifying the landslide proneness of these mountains. Now, the anthropogenic factors in Himalayas include the Jhum cultivation. So what exactly is the Jhum cultivation? So Jhum cultivation generally means slash and burn cultivation. Okay, so you very often come across this slash and burn cultivation. So where tribals usually clear the forest land. Okay, so they usually cultivate clear the forest land for the cultivation. So once they have harvested the produce, so they just burn the crop. Okay, so they shift to the new area. So this is known as Jhum cultivation or deforest slash and burn cultivation. And because of this, a huge deforestation usually takes place, and that leads to landslides. So there are some examples. For example, Ratnagiri and Idukki in Kerala so are the major example. So when we talk about the examples of landslides in Himalayan region, Almora, Pithogarh and Rudraprayag are the major examples of landslides in the Himalayan region. Okay, so this is how you have to differentiate the causes between Western Ghats and Himalayan region when it comes to the landslide occurrence. However, when writing conclusion for this answer, you just have to suggest few measures for avoiding landslides or mitigate the landslide impact. So landslides in the Himalayan region are primarily driven by the tectonic factors or tectonic activity. Why? Because as I have already told you that the Indian plate has been colliding with the Eurasian plate. Okay, so this is one of the reason for the increased intensity of landslides in the Himalayan region. So after that, there's also Himalayas also experience intense rainfall. So intense rainfall in the sense that if you look at the northeast monsoon, so it is it results in very heavy rainfall in the northeast states. So because of heavy rainfall also landslides could be triggered. So however, while those in the Western Ghats are actually influenced by steep slopes. Okay, so if you look at the Western Ghats, the mountains have steep slopes and weathering, human activities. So all these factors are major causes of landslides in the Western Ghats region. So therefore, in this context, we need to adopt the effective landslide prevention measures. They should be tailored to specific causes and conditions in each region. Okay, so this is how you have to write a proper conclusion, and in this conclusion you can also mention some suggestions to mitigate these landslides. Okay, so the next question that we're going to discuss is about the Gondwana land. So I hope you all of you have a basic idea about the Gondwana land, and this Gondwana land is located across central and eastern India, and states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh and parts of Madhya Pradesh comes under the Gondwana land. Okay, so in this context, the question has been asking, despite India being one of the countries of the Gondwana land, its mining industry contributes to much less to its gross domestic product in percentage terms. So discuss this statement. So you have to discuss this statement. Now see, Gondwana land generally have a huge mineral concentration. Okay, so Gondwana land usually houses a huge number of minerals. Now if you look at this Gondwana land location, iron, aluminum, bauxite, so major minerals are usually found in this region. So despite such a huge concentration of minerals, its overall contribution to India's GDP is much less than its actual potential. Okay, so this is what we have to discuss in this answer. Now understand what exactly is the Gondwana land. Now, so where is Gondwana land? It is located in India. So we have seen that the Gondwana land is located in the central part of India. So it is actually the ancient supercontinent that existed from the late Precambrian to the Jurassic periods. Okay, so Gondwana land is existed from the late Precambrian to Jurassic periods. So it is actually comprised of today's Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia, and the Arabian Peninsula, along with the Indian subcontinent. Okay, so the Gondwana land extended to all those countries. Okay, so if you look at the GDP contribution of this Gondwana land to those respective countries, it is very high compared to India. So because that is why it is in question that despite India having a Gondwana land, its overall contribution to minerals is very low. So in this context, while its legacy has left many of these regions mineral resource rich countries, however, India's utilization of this resource wealth from the Gondwana land, especially in terms of its overall contribution to the GDP, is actually very low when we compare it with the actual potential. Okay, so what are the major reasons for that, and how can we increase the overall contribution of the Gondwana land into its GDP? Okay, so if you consider mining in India, we need to talk about the coal reserves. Okay, so the location of coal reserves, even the coal reserves are mostly concentrated in the Gondwana land, in those 3 or 4 states in the central and eastern part of India. Now at the world level, India is the 5th largest coal reserves in the world. Okay, so India has the 5th largest coal reserves. Okay, so this is India has one of the highest levels of coal reserves. So apart from that, despite that, the country imports a significant amount of coal in order to meet its demand. Because if you look at the total energy basket, 62% of our energy is produced from the thermal power plants. So therefore, the country imports a significant amount of coal, primarily due to quality and energy efficiency of the domestically available coal. Okay, so because of these reasons, it is primarily due to the quality and the energy efficiency of the domestically available coal. Now after that, we need to talk about the iron ore. Okay, so now iron ore also mostly available in the Gondwana land areas. Okay, Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, these are the states where the Gondwana land is located. So therefore, India is one of the top most producers of iron ore globally, with major deposits actually found in these 3 states. Apart from that, if we talk about the other minerals, so there are also different other minerals, for example bauxite, manganese, limestone and mica. Okay, so these are the different minerals. They are available in the Gondwana land region. So some of the other significant mineral deposits which actually found in the Gondwana land region. So we talked about the mining in India, different resources, the mineral resources. Now we have to understand the contribution of mining and mineral resources to our GDP, gross domestic product. Now mining sector's contribution to India's GDP is around 2.5%. Okay, so India's overall mining sector contribution is 2.5%, and it is significantly lesser than several other developing countries. So if you compare this number, GDP contribution of mineral resources, to other countries like Australia, so they also have the Gondwana land, they also inherit the Gondwana land, so they have the much higher contribution to their respective GDP, and that is coming from the mining sector alone. So therefore, in this context, there are some structural flaws within India that have been inhibiting overall contribution of the mining sector to the GDP contribution. So therefore, in this context, what are those factors which have been limiting the contribution of GDP? So it is very important that we should understand the factors which have been limiting the contribution of GDP. The first and foremost factor, the regulatory and policy changes which are in place. So they have been inhibiting the overall contribution of mining sector to the GDP. So what are the policy and regulatory challenges which are in place? So mining sector in India are often seen as a over-regulated, and it is leading to delays in clearances and approvals. Okay, so it is well known fact that the mining sector in India is over-regulated. Okay, so because of this reason, when it is over regulated, it is very often results in delay in clearances and giving approvals to the mining. So therefore it becomes less competitive to invest. Even private sector is not incentivized enough to invest in the mining sector. So these regulatory challenges can act as a deterrent for the private players and even the foreign investors as well. Okay, so foreign investors are not ready to invest because we have already put in place a lot of regulatory and policy challenges, and that act as a disincentive on the part of these private players as well as the foreign investors. And after that, we need to talk about the technological constraints. Okay, so these also comes up with the several technological constraints. Okay, so advanced mining technologies are not ubiquitously implemented across the sector. Okay, so they are not properly implemented across sector, and this has been leading to several inefficiencies and also lesser extraction of minerals. After that, the environmental and social concerns that we have to consider. Now when we look at the regions which have rich mineral resources, so they also have problems like left-wing extremism and even the environmental groups protesting against the clearance of forests and deforestation, displacement, rehabilitation, resettlement of the people. So all these factors have also been playing a larger role in the overall contribution of the mining to our GDP. Now mining activities often led to the environmental degradation. Okay, so it often led to the environmental degradation, and even the displacement of local communities usually takes place because of the mining activities, and that has led to the popular opposition to these mining activities in those areas. Now after that, the increased resistance from the civil society also, because when people, the indigenous people are displaced from their habitats, then we face the stiff opposition from the civil society, and that has also necessitated the rigorous environmental clearances. Because so in the changing times, environment has given a lot of importance, not just in India but in other countries as well. So therefore in this context, in the age of afforestation, efforts are being made to ensure afforestation in different parts of India. So it is very important to protect environment. So therefore rigorous environmental clearances were also put in place. So that also hindering extraction of mineral resources from these areas. So after that, we should also talk about the illegal mining activities. So illegal mining activities are also to some extent are responsible for the inadequate contribution of minerals to our GDP. So in this context, when you write the conclusion for this answer, okay, so you just emphasize on the need to tap the potential of these mineral resources, and that is very important. So India's rich geological history and association with the Gondwana land has actually endowed it with a vast mineral resources. Okay, so it has endowed this with the vast mineral resources. So however, a combination of infrastructural, environmental challenges actually limited the contribution of mining sector to India's GDP. Okay, so therefore there's a pressing need for reforms. So what sort of reforms in technical upgrades are required. So there should be a balanced approach, and that should ensure India can harness, or India can tap its vast mineral resources or mineral wealth in a sustainable manner and contributing more significantly to the economic growth of our country. Okay, so this is how you have to conclude this answer. So you no need to write such a vast or lengthy conclusion. So you just emphasize on the highlighted part. Okay, so since remember it is just a 150 word answer, so you just have to write this highlighted part. Okay, so that's enough. And the next question that we're going to discuss is about water bodies, the reclamation of the water bodies. Now in the age of climate change, water bodies have been fast disappearing. So in this context, water bodies have a huge role to play. Okay, so they have a huge role to play. So what sort of a role they usually play? For example, they help in recharging the underground water tables. Okay, so this is the first use. And secondly, so they help develop wetlands in the areas. Okay, and they also provide livelihoods for the people. Agricultural irrigation, drinking water, and they also support local ecosystems. So since it has a lot of benefits, we need to focus on reclamation of these water bodies into the urban land use. Okay, so the question is, what are the environmental implications of the reclamation of water bodies into urban land use? Okay, so explain this with the examples. So these are some of the water bodies. Now in this context, land reclamation actually means, so what exactly is the land reclamation means? So land reclamation means that creating land either by removing water from muddy areas or raising the level of land. Okay, so this is actually the meaning of land reclamation. Okay, so I'm repeating again, land reclamation means creating land either by removing water from the muddy areas or raising the level of land. So this is what is called as land reclamation. Now with increasing demand for land, so there has been a potential demand or increasing demand for land, it can be a good solution for creating areas for building, agriculture and other usage. So in this context, reclamation of water bodies into urban land use has many environmental consequences. Okay, so it comes with several other environmental consequences as well. So the first and foremost environmental consequence that we have to discuss is about the damaged ecology because of the reclamation of lands. Now urban land transformation very often leads to the creation of residential commercial buildings around these water bodies. Okay, so hence they very often cause degradation of water ecology and influx of nutrients. So when we mention an example, so we can talk about the Dal Lake. Okay, so Dal Lake is in Jammu and Kashmir, and Dal Lake and other water bodies in Srinagar are actually a great example of damaged ecology because of the land reclamation. Okay, and land reclamation can also change the shape of the seabed and wave patterns. Okay, now if you carefully observe the land reclamation patterns, so it can also change the actual shape of the seabed. Okay, and the wave patterns as well. So in turn it will change the tidal patterns and leading to changes in the overall ecosystem. Okay, so please understand these are the potential negative environmental implications because of the attempts of land reclamation. So after that we need to talk about the encroachment as well. Now what does it mean when we talk about encroachment? So as more people have been migrating to cities, now according to the United Nations data, so India's 50% of population will live in urban areas by the year 2040. So therefore in this context we have been observing more and more people have been migrating to these cities, and availability of land has been getting scarce. So in this context, even a small piece of land in urban areas has a high economic value. Now the land demand has been significantly increasing in these urban areas, so therefore in this context even a small piece of land a huge economic or huge or high economic value. Now in this context we should also discuss about the other major environmental implications. So this could also result in frequent floods in the urban areas. Okay, so because water bodies very often act as a sponges for extra rainfall. For example, if urban areas have experienced torrential rainfall, then these lakes or water bodies in urban areas usually act as a sponges for those extra rainfall, and they even help in preventing or controlling the floods. So therefore the reclamation of water bodies has led to a higher incidence of more and more floods. Okay, so this the biggest example is Mumbai. So Mumbai has been growing as a commercial city, and water bodies reclamation has been taking place. Okay, over a period of time, the water bodies in Mumbai city have fast disappeared. So that led to the severe floods or frequent floods in the Mumbai city. So after that, we need to talk about the depletion of vegetation. So depletion of vegetation is also another major factor. Okay, so in the depletion of vegetation, because transformation of soil cover to concretized landscape. Now if you observe most of these if you observe most of these urban areas, they very often have the concretized landscape. Okay, so it is also called with the name concrete jungles. Concrete jungles. So therefore in this context, so it has further reduced the permeability and increased the runoff, and which has been one of the primary causes of flooding in the Mumbai during the monsoon season. Okay, during Mumbai monsoons. So after that, we need to talk about the extinction of species as well because of the reclamation of land. Now land reclamation of wetlands, okay, have increased the biochemical oxygen demand. Now I hope you understand what exactly is the meaning of the biological oxygen demand. Now biological oxygen demand, maintaining its balance in the lakes or ponds is very important to maintain the lake ecosystem. For example, if biological oxygen demand increases, and that led to the depletion of the fish stocks in those ponds. Okay, so it even led to the eutrophication of those ponds. So therefore biological oxygen demand increasing is a not a good symbol, and which is further detrimental not just only for the aquatic sources but also for the aerial fauna. We can mention about the Hussain Sagar of Telangana, Hyderabad, as an example. Okay, so it is a good example of such a situation where the biological oxygen demand of this lake has been increasing. So after that, we need to talk about the pollution. Okay, so water bodies very often have a purifying effect through filtering of contaminants. Okay, so they have the purifying effect. So because of this purifying effect, so they can purify the water. So they can purify water on their own. So therefore the water bodies have turned into a landfills for several cases. Now water bodies in those urban areas were turned into landfill sites. So because of this reason, the overall value of the lakes or the ponds have also further declining. So many water bodies in West Bengal, Guwahati's Deepor Bill, for example, have been used by municipal corporation to dump solid waste. Okay, so now these urban lakes are being used to dump the solid waste, or the illegal encroachment is also another major problem in these urban lakes or ponds. So therefore in this context, when you write the conclusion for this answer, you just mention that water bodies, they not only support high concentration of biodiversity, okay, so they support higher concentrations of biodiversity, so but they also offer a wide range of important resources, ecosystem services like food, water, fiber, and groundwater recharge, and water purification, food moderation, storm protection, erosion control, carbon storage, and climate regulation. So these all services are usually provided by the urban lakes. So therefore the conservation of these lakes is a very important aspect that we need to take care of. Okay, so that's all. This is how you have to address this question. Okay, so that's how you can make it more and more comprehensive and holistic, so that you will get good marks in your answer in your exam. Okay, so that's all for today, and tomorrow also we will discuss few more questions in this same paper. And thank you so much. If you like our work, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon, and also like our video if you really like our work. Thank you.